once you have your Raspberry Pi up and running and it's performing some sort of service or it's doing some sort of job, you're likely going to want to send that data to third parties, or you're going to want other devices on your network to be able to access that data. So a really good way of doing that is by setting up essentially an API that leverages the HTTP protocol. And in this example, we're going to be installing an nginx web server on the Raspberry Pi. We're also going to show you how third-party devices on that network are going to be able to make calls to your Raspberry Pi and query it for some data.
Okay, so in this tutorial, we're just going to quickly go over how to set up a basic HTTP server on a Raspberry Pi device. So currently we're actually looking at my Mac computer, but this computer resides on the same network. So we're going to use this as an example to connect to the Raspberry Pi. What we're first going to do is we're just going to ping the Raspberry Pi to make sure that it's on the network. So I'm just going to do ping raspberrypi.local, which is kind of an alias for the Raspberry Pi as opposed to using an IP address, because the IP addresses can rotate. So we're able to ping it, and that's good. But ping is not HTTP traffic. So let's go ahead and do a curl on the same host. So raspberrypi.local. And it says fail to connect on port 80 because we don't have the server set up on Raspberry Pi. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, set up that server, and then we'll come back and try to make some HTTP requests to it. Okay, so for this example, we're going to be using nginx HTTP server software. So the first thing we want to do is open up a terminal. And so that I don't get prompted for my credentials every time I run a command, I'm going to run sudo su dash, and that will just mark me as a root user. So first, in order to install nginx, we're going to update the package list. So we're going to do apt get update. And just to verify that we have no server running currently on localhost, I'm just going to do curl localhost, and you can see it's unable to connect to port 80. So now we're going to install nginx, and we're just going to do apt get install nginx. And when you install this, it's going to immediately set up a basic web server that's going to return a welcome page, a static HTML page. Okay, so now if I run that same command, localhost, I actually get an HTML file back. And we can also verify that by coming over to the browser here and navigating to localhost. And it returns our welcome file. Okay, so now that we have our nginx server standing up on our Raspberry Pi, I'm going to come back over to my Mac here, and we're going to make a request to the Raspberry Pi hostname and see if it returns that content. So we're going to do curl raspberrypi.local, and you can see now it returns an HTML page. And additionally, we could come over to Chrome and we could put in here http:// raspberrypi.local, and it's going to return the content on that HTTP server. So this is just a basic way to set up an HTTP server on your Raspberry Pi, so it's hosted by your Raspberry Pi, and it's accessible from other devices on your network. So it's pretty useful for communications and setting up APIs and such. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thanks for listening.